Okay, so we're kind of coming towards the end of the formal presentations for the day, and I kind of wanted to try and tackle the subject of actually how do we do a successful migration to Office 365, and I've already shared some of my thoughts and opinions of this. Bit back to front, but for any of you that have not met me before, my role here at ComputerWorld is I'm Pre-Sales and Operations Director. I'm a geek, I'm a techie, I'm a blogger, I'm an author. My wife is very, very patient and puts up with me spending a lot of time in front of a computer. I'm quite passionate about my job. I like what I do, and I think it's important to have that passion and have that energy. And one of the things that I do here and I coordinate is something called Define Tomorrow, which is our blog, where you'll find a lot of this content on, and also my engineers, when they get stuck, when they have a problem, I encourage them to also blog about it on Define Tomorrow. So yes, some of the sales guys might say, well, you can't tell our customers how to fix these problems. That's our job to go in and fix them. But at the end of the day, I think if I'm able to help people in their day-to-day roles, they're more likely to think of us when you are in the time of need, and you do want that kind of trusted pair of hands. So I just want to start by reflecting with kind of why we're looking at the cloud, why we're looking at Office 365. Having email in the cloud isn't really something new at all. It's something that's been around for a long period of time. Microsoft had it as a package called Exchange Online before Office 365 was even invented. So why are we standing up now? Why is the cloud becoming more and more apparent? I mean, fundamentally, what is the cloud? It's somebody else's data center. It's no different underneath it all. It's really what you do with it and how you consume it. And what I really want you to encourage you to do is to think about it differently than just an Exchange server online. There's lots of stats here that you've probably heard time and time again. You may have heard me present, but the whole world is being revolutionized by software at the moment. We kind of went through a period where hardware and sort of the industrial revolution, where we were able to enable and do better things by the innovation that engineers were able to do. And we're kind of going through that pattern now with software. We've seen things like artificial intelligence, self-driving cars, Airbnb, Uber, and all these companies picking up, and they don't really own resources, they don't own assets. What they own is IP, they own software. And that's all well and good, but hey, I work for a law firm in the middle of Bristol, so yeah, Barry, I'm not going to be driving the next, inventing the next self-driving car. But the way that industry is going is changing, and the way our responsibility inside of our business is going to go is also changing. Our responsibility in 5 to 10 years from now is no longer making sure those disks are flashing, making sure that piece of server hardware is working the way that it should have been working. It is truly being the gap between the technology, the enablement, which is likely to be in the cloud, and the business, what the business needs to do and what the user needs to do. And one of the areas that I've written books on is around end user computing. End user computing is effectively anything the user does. And I spend a lot of time now not doing implementations of technical projects, but actually going into businesses and understanding what do the users actually do. Near enough every single IT department I speak to, including myself, because I've been there, that's the background I've come from, we all assume we know what happens inside our business and what our users actually do. Or we think that we know it so well that they should only do this. How dare they try and do something themselves and download a piece of software and, oh, it's my system, I manage this, I want it to work this way. We need to be more open because the world is changing. So we need to move the focus from the products and the metrics and focus on the business and the users, which kind of brings us back to a graphic that I have presented before, but effectively this is what the desktop looked when I started working in IT. This is what I was supporting, those beige towers that are on everyone's PC with a massive CRT monitor that maybe some of us are only just getting rid of at the moment. But fundamentally that doesn't look that different to the modern desktop, because that's what we've replaced it with. How's it different? Well, the tower's now bolted to the back of the screen if we're lucky, or they've got a laptop. We put a LCD monitor on it or something like that, and that's IT's vision of how we modernise the desktop, when realistically the users want to do something more like this. They want to be using their own laptop or a mobile device. They want to be using work tablets, or maybe their home tablet, and they are also wanting to be able to access their applications and data anywhere and any time. But if we're so stuck in the mindset that no, our modern IT is still using the PC that I tell you to use, then the next thing that is going to happen is we're going to end up with something called shadow IT. And whether we like shadow IT or not, it's going to happen. What does shadow IT mean? It means that me as an end user, and I am the worst criminal, if I can't do something with the systems that IT provide, I go to the App Store, I find an app, and it works for me. As soon as I do that, IT loses complete control. I can no longer secure it, I can no longer protect it. And it is our role, if anything is going to stay the same from the kind of the where we were 10 years ago to where we are moving forward, we are still the custodians of the data. And the data is where you will live or die. How do your backups work? Are your antiviruses up to date? Has there been a data breach? Are we secure? That is really the main job of IT, and we're moving to this new one of enabling the business. So we need to make sure that we're finding new ways to be able to enable the users, but importantly, we're still able to secure and manage the infrastructure, whether it's on our premise or elsewhere. So that kind of brings us to the cloud. And what is the cloud? As I've said, it's somebody else's data center, and we're just looking at innovative ways of how we consume the cloud. It might be quite nice for us because we pay as we go. We just pay for what we're using. That's quite advantageous. We don't have to go out and do big capital expenditure to be able to roll out a specific workload. We're seeing things like infrastructure as a service take off in certain use cases, mainly test and development, where you have kind of peaks and troughs. Maybe you're doing a project, you have a development team, all of a sudden they need an X amount of resource. Does it make the sense to go and buy enough data center equipment to go and expand for that short-term workload, or do you just chuck it out to the cloud? And that's exactly what we're seeing is happening. We're also seeing things like disaster recovery as a service, backup as a service, really start to take off because we're needing to protect a lot more data, and the business is requiring our data to be a lot more available than it ever has been before. When I started in IT 15 or so years ago, if there was an hour's downtime, yes, I'd have some upset users, but would it really be a detrimental effect to the business I was working in back then? Probably not. I'd have some grumpy staff that would moan at me they couldn't do anything. Now, in this day and age, to some of our businesses, an hour's downtime can be a significant financial loss because technology is now our business. And even if you kind of reflect on someone like John Deere, they've been making machinery for I don't know how long. They've been making tractors that plough the fields. A main part of their business now is intelligent systems that allow them to know when their farmers are out, where seed should be planted, what quantities of seed should be planted, and their whole business is now being built up on the software-defined element to farming and not just building these massive machines. So Office 365 is generally the first step that I'm seeing most companies feel comfortable to foray into the cloud world. So what is Office 365? Generally, we've had a lot of sessions, so I'm not going to dig into the main applications, but it's the applications that you know and love. It's still installed on your PC in the same way that you've been used to, but also available in the web with the ability to store data, to analyze data, available anywhere, anytime. You can see benefits from licensing your standard Office products on your work PCs just with Office 365. You also have multi-use licenses, so actually the home users may be able to put it on their home PC. That's a great way to get some buy-in from a user. If you say, oh, by the way, I'm happy for you to install this on your home PC, you're giving them 100 quid's worth of software. I mean, that is a nice benefit that's going to get them using it. And we've got a number of different elements here, a number of different applications. What the challenge I see is actually how do we overcome an Office 365 migration being all about just moving your email from on-premises to the cloud. Now, that is an important part. At the end of the day, anybody that's deploying on-site Exchange servers today needs to have a significant business reason to want to do it in that way, in my opinion. We're at a stage now where it should be secure, it should be accepted, it is the defined standard for moving to your email to the latest version. We need to make sure that that stage alone, we do it in a considered way. We are fully aware as to actually how email works inside of our business, because it's not just the user's mailboxes, it's public folders, it's multifunction devices, it's how your SAN and your ESX hosts and your Hyper-V hosts or whatever it is you're using alerting if there's a problem. And a lot of people I've had that have done an Office 365 migration, they've got to the point where they've been able to tidy up their on-premise installation and then have forgot that actually, well, I've got some send connectors for various different devices that have been alerting me quite happily that I haven't redirected up into the cloud. Also, email is by far one of the most critical services. So what would happen if during the migration I had some downtime or I had some data loss? So it does need to be methodically planned. If you're doing a fairly simple migration from one of the latest versions to Exchange to the cloud, it's actually quite simple. There's no need for third-party tools. But if you're maybe doing a more complex migration from an older version, Exchange, I don't know, 2010, or Lotus Domino, God forbid I was a Domino administrator back in the day, you probably want some help from a tool that's just going to sit in the middle, it's going to make it seamless. And don't forget, when you are doing that mail migration, part of it is moving the email from on-premises to the cloud. The other part is how do we reconfigure the user's machine? And consideration does have to be given to the versions of Outlook that you are using to make sure that is going to work seamlessly with Office 365. And how are we going to configure that? Now, some of the benefits with these third-party tools that you can get is they will go out and reconfigure the client machines for you when their mailboxes move. With some of the later versions, if you're using an Outlook 2016 or the version before, I think it was 2013, it doesn't have too much disruption. We're able to handle most of that at the back end. But another point also to consider, and I think this isn't just Office 365. If you were deploying a new application inside of your business, I hope you would go through a process of not just going, okay, I'm going to install that and now I'm going to get all the users on it and that's it done. You go through a process of understanding the business requirements. What is this being used for? How much protection do I need to place around this machine? How available does it need to be? Importantly, from my perspective, and I could do a whole day on the subject, is what is your disaster recovery requirement? What is your RPO, recovery point objective? That is, how much data can you afford to lose? And what is your recovery time objective, your RTO? How quickly do you need to be able to recover that data if there is a problem? All of those things will dictate how often you need to back it up, how resilient you need to make it. However, I speak to a lot of people that have adopted Office 365 and things like that, and we have this magical feeling that anything that's in the cloud has some magical pixie dust sprinkled over the top of it that means that we don't have to be responsible for the data. Now, arguably, if all your data is lost, or you read The Sun tomorrow morning and your company's name is on the front of it that all your payroll data has just been stolen, who is the person inside the business they're going to come to and shout at? It's you. We are the custodians of the data. So what I would say is when you are looking at these services, when you are looking at Office 365, there are ways to ensure your data is protected. There are ways to make sure your data is secure. Natively, Office 365 is a very secure platform, but there's always things we can do to become more secure. I would be aware as to what the data retention policies are. So if data is deleted, whether that's accidentally a mailbox is deleted, whether a user accidentally deletes a folder, what are the retention policies? How often is it archived for, and how often is it backed up for? The large majority of Office 365 plans do not come with a backup functionality. They may come with an archive functionality, and the default setting for the archive functionality is only a small set of time. So don't assume when you move something to the cloud that someone else is protecting your data. And this really goes for everything over and above just the mail, but all those other components as well. So how do we kind of jump out from more than just the mail into kind of some of these vast other services? And I'm not going to dig into them because we've had that today. But what I recommend we do is we start with the user. And this is something that Joe Bagley, VMware's CTO, said when he spoke at our event. And his piece of advice was, my recommendation for IT managers in this day and age is to start with the user. Don't start, I did that thing early 2000s, where I went trying to collect stuff for my CV. So I needed a SAN. I'd never done a SAN. That needs to be on my CV. So I went out there and my business needed SAN-based storage and it was cool. So we did virtualization, we did Blade chassis, we did Cisco networking. Lucky for me, my CV ended up lovely at the end of it. But we're not in that era anymore where we can just do IT for IT's sake. I'm sure you're all more than aware of it, that when you go and do something, you've got to build a business case, a justification for making the spend. The luxury I had back then was, oh, that's IT, that's that black room of pit that we just have to chuck money every now and then, and if we're nice there, keep it running, we'll trust them. Because the CEO, CFO, or whoever that is can now go out and go, well, hold on a minute, I can do email online for £2.50 per user, £3 per user. Why are you saying I need all of this stuff to be able to do it? We're in a different world. We need to be able to justify what we're doing. So let's start with the user. Let's understand what their jobs are, and let's understand what their biggest challenges are. Let's understand what they like about IT and what they don't like about IT. I went and did it for a customer the other day. They're a legal firm, and they are so scared about losing data. In fact, my guys had to be shadowed around the building whenever we were there, even to a point when you went to the toilet, someone stood outside the toilet just in case you were going to run off and find some secret information inside their business. However, we were able to hack into their wireless within 5 minutes from standing outside their building. We were able to, when I sat down and spoke to the users, this is what I've been brought into, they were so fed up with the age of their PCs, they felt that it was not a good reflection of them and their business when they were in front of customers, and they hated the Nokia Lumia devices that they were given as mobile phones because they were the cheapest ones, that even though IT didn't use it, they'd all gone out and bought their own laptops, and they go into meetings with their own laptops, and they are accessing work email and files on their iPhone because the Nokia is awful. So whilst IT have secured the laptop, they're fully encrypted, and the Nokia device is a signed-off device, they'd actually not told IT, but gone out and chosen the devices that worked for them. And okay, they couldn't access the work files on it unless they had a VPN which was only accessible, but they were creating their meeting notes on their personal laptop, and they were saving them in Dropbox on the personal laptop because they could then access them elsewhere. So IT is there, head down, I'm nice and secure, I'm doing what I need to be doing, and the users are like, oh, IT are rubbish, so I'm going to do what I'm going to do. So this is about bridging the gap, understanding which ones of these tools are going to be useful. Things like OneDrive could replace Dropbox if it's done the right way. How do we use data in Office 365? I've got 3 different opinions. I think they'd be similar to someone like Duncan's. For your home drive, OneDrive is fantastic. If you need somewhere to be able to dump files that are only required for you, we dump them in somewhere like OneDrive. It's available on your mobile device, it's available on your laptops and your PCs. If you have structured data, the kind of things that Duncan was talking about earlier, procedural documents, health and safety documents, and all the other lovely wonder things, something you can put a structure around in the ways you work with someone like Duncan, and SharePoint can be really, really good for that. What I don't believe we have at the moment is somewhere where you dump your P drive, your shared network drive, that drive that is full of archived data that has been growing for the last 25 years, that you send a panicky email around once a year going, guys, please can you clear out the shared network drive because it's getting really big and I'm going to have to buy some more storage, and we hope with God's will that it's going to get smaller magically, and then we kind of sit back a week later and go, yeah, no one's done that, those users, they're a pain in the butt. Where do we put that kind of data? And I think that's the point today where we're trying to judge how do we do that, how do we use that, and I don't think there's an obvious place to chuck that in Office 365 today. We've got some of the new tools there. We're using Yammer internally. Effectively, think of Yammer as Facebook for the business. So we use that for talking internally and collaborating and working on projects together and stuff like that. So I'm kind of pitching it as a bit of a journey. Office 365 is great, and if you want to move your email to it, that's fine. Just understand how you're going to back it up, understand how you're protecting spam as it comes into it. We can offer you some help around the backup tools that we recommend. I recommend that they're all in the cloud. At the end of the day, if Office 365 is in the cloud, why do I want to get a copy of that email back to my data center? We can do that with something like Veeam if you wanted to, but ultimately we'll take a copy of that to Azure to make sure that data is backed up, quick and easy to then recover. And that is kind of the protect element. And I spoke to a pharmaceutical company the other day who are very, very concerned about security, but they said that they just rolled out a brand new HR application. I went, that's great. What sign-off process did you go through for that then? How did you make sure that they met all your requirements and back it up the data? And what are the RPOs and RTOs? And the IT manager just went white. And he kind of went, yeah, I suppose we should still do that kind of stuff when we're putting it in the cloud, really, shouldn't we? Because he had been beating me up for the last 4 years as to how I was going to make sure his data center was secure and all of that, and then he felt that the cloud was just this thing that he could go and give someone else the responsibility for. So how are we going to protect the data, to me personally, is the second item. The third one is how are we going to enable the users? So it's all well and good sending an email around to all the users going, guys, we're now on Office 365, rejoice, you can go and use all the applications, have a lovely time, signing off, Mr. IT person. Migration complete. It's not going to work. They will continue using Evernote for their notes. They will continue using Dropbox for storing their files. They will continue to use whatever is as easily as accessible for them. Our goals as IT managers is to work with whoever is relevant inside the business, HR, to make sure the technology that we have certified that is going to secure our data is the technology that the users want to be used. Not forced to use, not screaming and kicking to go and use something else as we would have used to have done in the early 2000s and 90s. It is what they want to be using. Because an enabled user is a user that is able to get on with their work and will feel that they are able to be most productive in that application set. So don't educate a user on how to use the whole of Office 365. You're wasting your time. look at the components they will use on a regular basis. Maybe OneDrive. How do you collaborate with OneDrive? We've got some fantastic functionality in Word and Excel now, and even PowerPoint, where me and 3 other people can work on the same document together. So from that perspective, that could offer them some real benefits on how to collaborate together. You might be using, so we're using the service called Microsoft Video. So we do regular company meetings in this room where we get as many as our staff around, but we also film every single one of them. So all our poor guys that are out probably supporting you guys and can't enjoy the fun and games that we have on our company days here, at least get to see the important messages. But I don't feel that I'm putting it up to YouTube and there's a risk of someone else getting that important information for my business. So it's about picking those elements, educating the users and making them want to be able to use those services. And the way that we have found best is kind of a hybrid method of doing that. Maybe that's a tiny bit of instructor-led training in your office over a lunch break. Maybe it's getting everyone on Skype. In fact, we've just done that for some security training. Security is another big problem at the moment. And in fact, it's the user that is now the biggest risk to your business and not someone hacking in through your firewall, because they're going to get their details nicked on Facebook. They've used their same password on Facebook as they use for your Active Directory. I log in with their their Facebook password into your Active Directory. I go onto your file server and nick all your data. And I could guess I could go to a large amount of your company, send a few phishing emails and get into most businesses. So that is around educating the user, and the way that we're able to do that is we got as many users on Skype. Over a lunchtime session, they were given a short, sharp kind of presentation as to how to be more secure in the environment, and we're then able to rerun those over the coming weeks afterwards. We then start the migration. So once we have the building blocks into place, we know exactly how to start migrating our data from A to B. I've got Ollie Resterick, who is my Microsoft specialist, available today. So if you have any technical requirements on how do I move my data from on-premise Exchange to online, what is the best way of doing SharePoint online, we've got to have a conversation with Duncan. We can help you with the technicalities of that. But I see the bigger problem being actually, how does your business and your users want to be using it? And we then end up at Office 365. There was a statistic that I removed from this slide, but it's something like businesses that are using cloud technology are actually proven to be up to 20% more profitable. And that was an independent survey run by Gartner or someone like that. And it was just those companies that are actually working with their employees that are using the scale of the cloud were able to then drive profit throughout their business. So some of my favorites of Office 365. Business mobility. I love Office 365. I'm the worst employee. I've used a Mac, I've used my own iPad, I use the work iPad, I use my iPhone, but I can now truly get to those documents wherever, whenever, without feeling I have to use Dropbox. In fact, what's really nice is when I share a document between the board at ComputerWorld and we're all working on it, I upload it to OneDrive, I share it all with them, we're editing the same document. So no longer am I sending a document out to 5 people who then independently update it and I'm trying to merge together what's going on. Let's start collaborating. I mean, at the end of the day, especially if you guys are, I assume you are, getting kind of the next generation of employees coming into your business, they are used to talking on services such as WhatsApp, on Facebook, on Snapchat, and all the other things I'm not cool enough to be knowing about at the moment. They will expect to be able to communicate in that way when they're coming into your business, whether that's now or whether that's in the future. So email is no longer good enough. I love talking to people on the phone, but it seems the latest generation don't get that. That isn't the primary way that they talk to people. So having facilities like Microsoft Teams, like Yammer, like Skype, so I can send you a quick direct message rather than walking across the hall. There is a cultural thing. You need to get that balance right. We want to educate these younger people into the joys of face-to-face communication, but equally I think us that are a little bit more mature also need to kind of make sure we are relevant to the newer people we're trying to attract into our business. Make sure we're securing our data, and there's a suite called Enterprise Mobility and Security that goes alongside Office 365 that I can do things like document level protection. So that Excel document that's got all your sales figures in for the last 2 years or has a list of your customers in it, how confident are you that the CEO or a junior salesperson isn't about to email it to steve@computerworld.co.uk, but he actually sent it to steve@mybiggestcompetitor.co.uk. Quickly and easily, information can go to the wrong place, to the wrong person, and it doesn't have to be malicious. If you've used document level protection with EMS in coordination with Office 365 or without, that document is encrypted to the person that is meant to get it. So from that perspective, unless Steve opens it with his Active Directory credentials, they won't be able to read that document. It's useless. And even if it is accidentally signed to the wrong person or they make a copy of it, it constantly checks back via Azure Active Directory to make sure they still have permission. So you don't need to run that authority on-premise, that is now run in the cloud. And it does all kinds of other lovely stuff, Intune for managing mobile devices, cloud assessment, I think it is, which is how many of you feel that you know exactly what cloud applications are being used in your business? We probably don't. How do you know that? As part of EMS and Azure Active Directory Premium, you can put a small agent on every single one of your work laptops, and it tracks what cloud applications are being used in your business, and it tells you how much gigabytes of data are being sent there. So you can go and speak to the users and go, notice you sent 1 terabyte of data to Dropbox last week. Can I help you educate your user how to use OneDrive? Because this is the secure platform that the business really does need you to be using. Otherwise, they're going to continue sending it to Dropbox. A great product. So have a word with Megan at the back of the room. Megan manages our marketing team here at ComputerWorld and does our really big events that we run, as well as these smaller events and our social media. One of the products that she has adopted personally is called Microsoft Planner. This is a tool that is only just being released now. I think it's GA now. It was on early release before that. And effectively, it allows you to manage your tasks in a bucket list. So if you're using an alternative service, some people use Evernote, or there's another service that Microsoft recently bought. This is a good way that it is in Office 365, it's signed up by your Active Directory credentials, and you can manage your task list, you can allocate tasks to other people in your team, you can collaborate on when you're getting stuff done. If you're already paying for Office 365, it's likely you've got that, and Megan now uses that now exclusively to manage the whole of ComputerWorld's marketing campaigns and events. And the fifth one is kind of integration of services. What this is really about is, for me, if we're buying into Office 365, we're buying into Microsoft in the cloud, we need a way that we're able to start integrating everything together. The problem with the cloud is as much as it would be nice to think Office 365 can answer every problem my business has got, and I won't need to go and run any other software as a service applications, it's likely that you're going to have to. And us as IT managers, we need to be confident that we can block a user in one place. They leave the business, there's been a non-amicable split or something like that. We can go into Active Directory and we can disable that user, and they have no access to anything that I am concerned about. With the cloud, it's realistic that actually today most organizations are starting to end up with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different places that they would have to go and block a user from to make sure that they are no longer able to access business data. So with Office 365, with Active Directory Premium, we can use a number of services that allow us to bring these applications together, allows us to use Microsoft as the authentication body. So even if you're using Salesforce.com, they have to log into Office 365, which then passes them through onto Azure. And VMware have some similar platforms as well. So think, when you go back to your office, today, where I am I confident that I can block all of the data from all of my users? And probably the way that I would feel is actually I don't know what cloud services they're using, so I can't control that. So you want to start adopting platforms that are going to allow you to gain that control moving forward. Obviously, ComputerWorld can help you with a number of these services. We actually have a dedicated site and resource called migrate365.co.uk, where we focus purely on helping you get to Office 365 and the Microsoft Azure cloud. We can offer you services on how do you get from A to B, how to protect your data when it's in the cloud, whether that's EMS or whether that's backing up Office 365, how to enable your users and you guys. It's important, as well as the users know how to make use of it, you guys know how to administer it, to protect it, and how to best drive that for the business. We're also able to help with your Office 365 and Azure licensing and make sure you get the best price, but importantly the right package for you to get everything you include. And as Duncan's already covered, the consultancy around SharePoint. But importantly, with that ethos that I've mentioned, I truly believe in giving rather than just kind of telling you to come and buy our services. We've got some fantastic articles under the resources element there that actually we've got some of the writers for PC Pro to write for us. as well as some of our own engineers. So you'll find a mixture of content there, from technical content on the best ways to synchronize with Office 365 and user authentication from our own engineers, and some of the authors from the likes of PC Pro that have written around the challenges around businesses adopting and enabling users. And the other one is Microsoft Teams, the latest equivalent to what's called Slack, if any of you have heard of that, that is now inside of Office 365, how that could be used inside your business. So head over migrate365.co.uk.